Hi again, everyone. It is another Facebook Live. This time I'm trying a new program. It's called BeLive.tv. I'm using it to just have a better quality for all of you who have been following the Facebook Lives, the silentnomore.world website, the new YouTube channel, the up-and-coming podcast, and everything else with my work, with my cause, my story, Silent No More. I guess it's been about a month ago, I could have my dates off here. I actually went live to share my story. The biggest reason I did this is because, I have people who have overcome addiction, people who have lost loved ones to suicide, people who are deep in the battle of PTSD, people from across the world who shared how they overcame addiction, how being on the other side of opioid addiction, and interventionists and others they've been so vulnerable and honest about their stories, which is absolutely helping others. So as others are doing that, someone who cares a lot about me said, Gretchen, when are you going to share your story? So, I'd share bits and pieces, and I tend to, as I'm engaging with someone who's sharing theirs, but there's always been this little something holding me back from being all out, raw with honesty, vulnerable with the hard places of my own journey. I would kind of start my journey with the crisis that hit our household when my son, when his issues became our issues, but there was something always holding me back from really digging deep into why I did or didn't address certain things. So that brings me to where we are right now today, the day after Independence Day, just a little over a week before I leave for the Mrs. International pageant, just months after launching the silentnomore.world site. So I've done all this, and then I've just stopped shy of being ready to tell all of you in this social media world and everything of why I named it Silent No More. The journey I've had as I overcome this people-pleasing mentality, the fear of asking for help, the tendency to disappear inside myself. On one hand, I could be surrounded by people, but kind of exhausted and wanting to kind of find an alone place. Why have I struggled with all those things? What brought me to this place I am right now in July 2019? Where am I headed? And why I think it matters to others. So let's start with this. I said it before, I will say it many times over. I believe we are all here on purpose for a purpose. You are not an accident. I'm not an accident. The things that we have experienced, the beautiful, wonderful things, the traumatic, life-crushing things, the losses, the gains, all of it helps mold us to being where we are now. It shapes our decision-making processes. It affects how we do or don't make decisions. It strongly impacts the relationships we have now, have had in the past, and will have in the future. For me, it's been a huge journey as I've sought to see, why do people do what they do? Why are we impacted the way we are? And as I dig deeper, there was so much raw hurt deep inside myself that went long before the mental health crisis that we faced with my oldest son, to the Gretchen who was 3 years old, who was 4 years old, who was 13 years old, who was in her 20s, who was a single mom, who was a remarried mom in a blended family, all those things. So without dragging this out to be hours long, I'll give you the kind of bits and pieces that I think matter. First of all, I'm actually not going to start with August 1st, 2015. You'll see that, we'll touch on that. That is the day that police officers knocked on my door to let me know that my son's car was found abandoned in an embankment. It's the day that we had to have my son hospitalized. It's the day that we were like, how are we going to save our son and help our family and get to the other side of that dark place? I've said that, so I'm not going to touch on all those details the way I'm going to touch on the me details this time. About somewhere between March and April 2018, last year, in a very, very busy season. I had a daughter graduating from high school and who had just signed to become an Army reservist as she accepted a beautiful ROTC full ride scholarship. Go Abby. Planning my firstborn daughter's wedding, preparing for my next MBA semester, learning a new form of self-defense course or class, and then enrolling and taking on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I was doing all of this fun, exciting, great stuff and experiencing beauty all around. And in that, I started this new journey with anxiety that I had never felt before. I would be in the middle of something and then my heart would just start pounding. I don't know if any of you have done like high intensity interval training, but like where you do these sprints, like I used to do these 20, 30-second sprints, and then I'd recover a minute and a half, and I'd repeat it, and I do that a few times, increase my metabolism and my ability to have strong physical output. Well, sometimes just at rest, my heart would pound, and I'd feel almost physically like I was going through like an exercise recovery while I was just sitting there like this. Or I would be learning a kind of a cool thing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class, and suddenly feel trapped and fearful, and my heart would just go and go and go, and it wouldn't stop. And that really came to a head last May, may have been April. I was sleeping, woke up in the middle of the night, my heart 190 beats a minute, I'm trying to calm down. I'm thinking, whoa, maybe I didn't drink enough water. Maybe I'm a little dehydrated. Maybe I need more electrolytes. So I go downstairs to where I am right now. I drink some water and kind of give myself the nutrition. And the whole time my heart's still pounding. And I'm kind of talking to myself, well, maybe I just need to relax. And I run a bath. And quite a while goes by before I start becoming very fearful that I'm having some sort of heart attack or something physical going on with me. Wake my husband up in the middle of the night. He takes me to the emergency room, where sure enough, my heart's still racing and pounding. And then turns out all the tests show that I have this, what seems to be a very healthy heart. And I'm asked if I have anxiety. I'm like, no, I'm cool. I'm pretty chill. None of that's going on. And then fast forward a couple of months later, by then I've seen a cardiologist, I've had a stress test, I've had lots of testing, and I'm told I have not just a healthy heart, but like a super healthy heart, but perhaps I have anxiety. I go home and talk to my husband. On one hand, I'm relieved that my heart's healthy, because the last thing I want is heart disease, On the other hand, I'm having to address the very real possibility that I have this undiagnosed anxiety that I didn't even know I had. I'd always chalked up my sensitivities to being soft-hearted, occasional feeling overwhelmed, just being a super busy mom and kind of boss babe mom who's always working a bunch of things and furthering her education and everything. I'm like, of course I'm overwhelmed, or of course I'm a little soft-hearted and tired. Fast forward again to last August. I go ahead and start therapy, and it suggested that maybe I have PTSD, something that I never would have thought I had at all. I wouldn't say I forgot or blocked out past trauma, but I certainly had not addressed it to the point that it could be whatever. By the way, my husband is home, so you're going to hear my husband and dog barking and all that, so excuse this. So I decide I want some other opinions, and I see someone else, and after we assess everything, it's determined that yes, I do have PTSD. Yes, I need to address certain traumas that go way back. I start uncovering these layers. So picture an onion, and you've got that outer shell and it's yellow, whatever onion you've got, and you've got to peel the skin and you start to see the soft part. And that would have been like, I guess the part that I always saw, that kind of soft, squishy part that is soft-hearted. You know what you're going to get as soon as you get there, but you get layer to layer, and there's this stuff that's been there a little while. It's the root of it all, and whether it makes you cry or whatever else, it's the root of it. So we just kept having to peel back the layers. And I'm asked a question about, like, I can go back as far as I can remember. What's my first memory? And my first memory is being molested by someone I don't know. All I could tell you is that it was a black man with sort of like an afro hair, which I later learned was the husband or boyfriend of a trusted babysitter we had. No fault of my parents that this happened. This was totally the fault of whoever this man was who had been given access to me. So, I'm telling my brothers, or I'm telling my dad, like, did we have a house with a ladybug on it? And they're like, yeah. And we're looking at when we lived there and how little I must have been. And we see that, these are my very first memories. We go on, and this is something that happens later in my life by other men in my life after my parents had divorced. And, and I can tell people what I remember them looking like, but I have no names to go with them. So I can only assess that they were boyfriends or male visitors in my home because they had access to my bedroom. I could tell people what my bedroom looked like, that there were these clown pictures. I could tell them that there was a window next to my bed and that I could hide under my bed in a storm. I could tell you that, I could sneak in my brother's room to feel safe, and that they had like cowboy and Indian wallpaper. I had very specific memories. And sometimes, even as I would describe them, I'd feel a sense of calm when I think of where my safe places were in life. But I had this underlying angst over dealing with adults, or maybe a specific adult in my life at that time who I didn't feel protected by. And then I go on further in life and look further where I didn't feel I could contact my dad, meaning my biological dad. I could have said, Dad, these things have happened to me, or I don't feel safe, or I feel afraid, because he always made me feel safe. And I had this feeling like I had to, I guess, protect others or be there for others, and I didn't reach out to my dad. So I would have this feeling that I don't think I know. It followed me all the way into my 40s of protecting others, kind of watching the emotions of others if I would go through a hard time. So it became where I developed these habits, these processes of handling very serious things. So like when my ex-husband and I separated, it was very unexpected to me. I didn't expect him to leave. And by the way, I do forgive him, and we have a beautiful friendship and faith and everything else. But to go back to that was like my next huge traumatic incident from childhood. And I didn't tell a single soul in my family until a week had passed. There was something in me that didn't feel emotionally safe reaching out for help to the very people that could have and would have wanted to help me and support me and be there for me. So if you can all bear with me while I feel a little emotional here. That was about, 16 plus years ago. You might see my husband walking by here as being on camera, but if you hear noises, it's probably the dog or husband in there. So I look back now at almost 45 and see how I handled those sort of things in my teen years and my 20s. So I went through those first weeks of separation feeling utterly devastated, having only a handful of people where my ex and I were stationed at the time in Georgia, feeling very, very separated from what would have been my strongest support system, probably parents and brothers, not telling a soul for a long time because I didn't want to be a burden, I felt ashamed. That wasn't my fault, but I still felt a sense of shame. I felt like maybe I just wasn't enough, wasn't pretty enough, wasn't smart enough, wasn't a good enough wife, all of those things. So I have these layers of trauma that had been built up from childhood into my 20s, and they just kept piling up. By the time I'm separated from my ex-husband, I'm a mom with 5 young children. Although I had been in the Air Force, I've been a stay-at-home mom the vast majority of my adult life, all of my adult life, really, just about. And the panic of realizing I didn't have what would logically be marketable work skills. Frankly, being a homemaker and being kind wasn't going to be enough to subsidize income over child support. And so let's fast forward a little bit more. I'm a suddenly single, unexpectedly single mom living in a state I'm not from, although I had a lovely church and amazing people there. It wasn't my family. My ex was getting deployed. My family was far away. I made a very rushed decision to move. My younger brother by then had offered to have me live with him. He was also a suddenly single dad. He had 2 twin girls that he had custody of, and he's like, hey, Gretchen, it would help me, and then it would help you if you come here. We could be there for each other. That would have been so wise, but I was so fearful of being a burden to the one person that understood me more than anyone. So what did I do? I moved kind of close to him, and I'm suddenly thrust into living way below poverty level. Once again, all of these fears and these habits of not reaching out for help, of suffering in silence, of not feeling the emotional freedom to tell others just how hard it was. I took a waitressing job because I can make more money in a shorter period of time. I had applied for other jobs. Looking back, I realized way more often than not I was not hired because once HR personnel or managers and bosses realized that here I am, a young single mom of 5, there's no doubt that many viewed me as a liability, not an asset. Waitressing, on the other hand, allowed me to make more than minimum wage, work while my children were sleeping, nurse my youngest, and kind of be there for the kids during their after-school hours. Remember, I've been a stay-at-home mom for years. Since I got out of the Air Force, I was still 19, had my oldest son at 20, had my 5th at 28. I'm suddenly single, under 30 years old. So, excuse me, I'm itchy and allergy-ridden. So, all of this stuff kind of compounds. So here, childhood mindset traveled with me through my teen years, through my 20s. Unspoken hurts, all that deep hidden silence became the way I handled trauma, the way I handled being overwhelmed, the way I handled just about any major difficulty. My ex-husband would have truly been helpful at this point had he known just how much I was struggling alone. We could have at least said, hey, you know what, financially this is a struggle. I need these kids, they need me. We need to figure something out other than what we're doing. So kept suffering in silence, kept not reaching out for help. Before you know it, I'm going to a food bank at the church I was going to get food to supplement what I couldn't purchase. I'm making decisions if I'm going to pay utilities or rent, because by the time I've paid for childcare, utilities, rent, groceries, auto insurance, phone bill, there's just nothing left. So my kids were being provided for. There were times that I would feed them and then I would just eat rice. That's how bad it was. Finally reached out to my parents as I got an eviction notice on my door. My stepdad, who's now passed, I think wired money so that I could pay my rent. Immediately, I did reach out to my family and they were there for me. I had my Uncle Johnny, it's like, got a job for you. I'll help you find a place. My boys were staying with my dad. My girls were staying with my mom and my stepdad while I was house hunting and finding a place to live. Aunts and uncles, everyone rallied around me. And I don't think I ever really took advantage, if I look back, of telling my aunts and uncles, my cousins, my parents, how lonely and fearful I was. All they knew was the surface practical stuff. No one really knew the pain I was in. I kept that mindset all the way through meeting and then even remarrying. So my husband, Elon, unbeknownst to him, he marries this woman who doesn't really let you in very much. She struggles in silence. When she gets bills she can't pay, she just kind of leaves them on her desk because she's scared to look at them. When someone has deeply hurt her emotionally, she keeps it to herself. When you deeply hurt me emotionally, I don't always let you in. I just kind of survived. So I did that all the way from being 3 years old to a year ago at 43 years old. Now, in that mix, you have this moment in 2015 where my son has told us he feels worthless. He feels hopeless. He feels like a loser. He just can't see himself getting through his days without pot or alcohol. That's where he was. Meanwhile, I'd been trapped and locked inside myself. So I went into survival mode for my son. What resources does he need? How can I help him? What can we do to help save his life? What can we do to make sure that our other 5 children, our oldest who didn't live with us and the 4 youngest who are still at home, how do we make sure they know that they are loved, valuable? How do we survive our marriage? How do we just get through this? So I went into survival mode, still never addressing all of the ways that I dealt with trauma. So, we did help my son get to a better place. He's been very active, not just in his own personal recovery, but in helping and inspiring others. And then it just took a while. I was like that ticking time bomb, and that time bomb wasn't a bomb. It was absolute anxiety, which really didn't start to heal until I started talking about it, allowing others to give me their insights into what they've experienced and what worked for them. Even getting a low-dose medication. It's out of all of that struggle that I thought, you know what? I can't be silent about this anymore. And that's why I named my campaign, my work, my story, my efforts in bringing others in, and call it Silent No More. As all of you who are watching this, listen, if you take it in, if it's just you're like, oh my gosh, it's just another, Gretchen on Facebook Live. I want you to know that this story is not mine alone. I've talked to so many people, so many who've experienced similar crises, or they've experienced the same type of traumatic coping through the trauma they've experienced. I've talked to husbands and wives who said, you know what? I lost my first marriage because myself or my spouse were just awful at handling stress, or because this person was an alcoholic and I just couldn't live with someone who couldn't address that, or my spouse had bipolar disorder and I thought I was the crazy one. I thought it was all my fault. I talk and I see the families lost, the number of people I know who've lost an amazing person to suicide or overdose, someone with massive potential and beauty in their souls, gone because they just couldn't talk, because everyone suffered in silence. The families that are broken as they try to rally around their loved ones and feel like they can't ask anyone for help out of fear that their child or their spouse or their parent or another loved one will be judged. So I'm determined to end the silence so that those we love, they no longer stay trapped. We don't stay trapped inside ourselves. When we do that, we miss the absolute amazing potential to live to our fullest, what we were designed to do, to live unapologetically, striving to do great things in this world. As long as we stay in the prison of our mind, we stay in the prison of the silence, we actually quit giving others the opportunity to receive and give hope to others too. So this is my story so far. It's not over yet. You will eventually see the book Silent No More. It will be a fiction story based primarily upon my life, but also upon the many stories that have given me hope and excitement about the possibility and the future that we have as we end the silence. Thank you all for tuning in. I can't wait to see your journeys. I can't wait to share the rest of ours. Take this life, live it to its fullest. Your life is a gift. And as I said, we are all here on purpose for a purpose. Let's find yours today.